At a quiet farmer's market, my teenage daughter was crying, surrounded by 6 strangers, accusing her of being unchristian. They were there because of my ex-mother-in-law. She sent them. What they didn't know was that by the end of the week, I'd turn her entire church against her, with a binder of printed sins and a hymn book full of revenge. If you've ever had someone try to manipulate your life through lies or weaponize religion to shame you, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe for more satisfying justice, and drop a comment if you've ever seen karma delivered this poetically. Let's get into it. Let me start with some background because context is everything. I'm a 46-year-old mother of 2 amazing teenage daughters, 17 and 15. Their father, my ex-husband, died last year in a car accident. Sounds tragic, right? It was, but not in the way you'd expect. See, when he died, we weren't exactly on speaking terms. In fact, we were mid-divorce.
Why?
Because he cheated on me. Not just once. He had an entire second life. And I'm not being dramatic. He literally had 2 children with another woman. And here's the kicker. She died in that same accident. So overnight, I went from preparing for single life to suddenly being blamed for not adopting his affair kids. Imagine that. My daughters? They were the ones who found the evidence of the affair in the first place. They saw the messages. They heard the lies. And those poor girls, teenagers mind you, have been working with a therapist ever since to untangle the mess their father left behind. Now you'd think that would be enough drama for one family. But my ex's parents, 78 and 80 years old, had other plans. They tried to fight for custody of my daughters. Then, when that wasn't going their way, they asked to move in with us. Yes, the people defending the man who shattered our lives wanted to live in my house. The answer? A resounding, absolutely not. Things reached a new low one weekend at our local farmer's market. It was my youngest daughter's birthday, and I gave her a little budget to spoil herself. She was off happily browsing for sweets when my phone rang. It was her, sobbing. 6 older women had cornered her. Total strangers. They were shaming her, loudly, for not spending time with her poor grandparents and orphaned baby brothers. I felt this surge of fire in my chest as I ran toward her with my oldest daughter. And sure enough, there they were, a semicircle of scowling women, wagging their fingers like judgmental statues carved from hypocrisy. They accused my daughter's children of being unchristian, cold-hearted, and unforgiving. They asked my daughter why she didn't want to be a good big sister. They demanded to know why she wouldn't let her grandparents love her. I stepped between them and my daughter, so fast, I didn't even register the sound of my own voice at first. I was shaking with fury. I told my eldest to take her sister, pay for her stuff, and head straight to the car. Then I turned back to the vultures. Some of them I recognized from my ex-in-law's church, and they recognized me too. One sneered, "You should be ashamed. A Christian wife obeys her husband and his family." I laughed. Actually laughed. The bile in my throat turned to something sharp and sarcastic. Oh, so when exactly did Jesus say cheating was fine as long as the wife just shut up and took it? It got heated. Security got called. We were all asked to leave the market, and while I was walking to the car, these women, these self-righteous strangers, actually followed us, like a pack of nosy hyenas hoping for one last bite. That night, once my girls were safe in bed, I messaged a friend of mine who still goes to that church. I needed to know what was going on. What he told me, infuriating, but not surprising. My ex-mother-in-law had posted this dramatic, manipulative story on the church's Facebook group. She painted herself and her husband as these poor, grieving grandparents, cast out by their wicked daughter-in-law. She said we were leaving them homeless, claimed my daughters hated them for no reason, blamed us for not taking in the orphan baby boys. But the worst lie? She told them the affair children were from a surrogate, that I couldn't have more kids, and that I rejected the boys because they were boys. Let that sink in. She weaponized my supposed infertility. She exploited the deaths of her own son and his mistress. She completely rewrote the past to make us the villains, me and my daughters. Now here's the thing about their church. They can be weirdly rigid about a lot of things, LGBTQ+ issues, especially. But one thing they are absolutely fanatically intolerant about? Cheating. I knew if I exposed the truth, it wouldn't just be drama. It would be biblical-level fallout. And luckily, I had the receipts. Oh boy, did I have the receipts. Since the divorce was never finalized, his death paused the legal process. I was still within my rights to use the materials I'd gathered. And I had everything: photos of him with the mistress, flirty text messages, emails from his parents where they admitted to covering for him, messages where they guilt my daughters. One email, sent 2 days after my ex died, called my girls bastards and blamed them for driving their father to his death. That one burned into my brain. So the next day I got to work. I took all that evidence to a print shop, paid extra for the highest quality, thick paper, crisp ink, and then I made binders. But not just any binders. These things were styled like the hymn packets the church hands out during services. Each one looked totally normal from the outside. Open the cover, though, and boom. First image, my ex and his mistress, kissing on our couch. Not blurry, not vague, crystal clear faces. Underneath, the true story of ex-husband's name and mistress's name. I slid those binders onto the back table at the church the next Sunday. No one checks them, people just grab and go. By noon, the church Facebook page had exploded. The reactions? Glorious. Words like Jezebel, deceiver, false witness, betrayer of sacred vows. Some so strong the pastor had to step in and ask everyone to tone it down. People weren't just mad about the cheating. They were furious about the manipulation, the lies, the emotional abuse of my daughters. One woman even said, "I still don't like divorce, but now I understand. I hope OP finds her way back to the light." Unlike that man and his harlot. 2 members sent handwritten apology notes to my girls. One even invited us back to church for support. And my ex-in-laws? Shunned. Utterly. They stopped showing up to church entirely. My ex-Emile posted some long, dramatic rant about how no one cares for the elderly anymore. How her great son would have taken care of her. With what money, I wonder? Because I was the breadwinner. The only reason they're not broke is because my daughters inherited his insurance and bank account, which they had the audacity to try and sue for, by the way. As for the will, my ex told me he'd made our daughters the beneficiaries. Turns out he secretly listed his parents instead. I never fought to make myself the heir. I always wanted everything to go to my girls. But when the truth came out, and the court saw how his parents had treated them, the money rightfully landed in their hands. So now, the women who try to shame my daughters in public? They've become pariahs in their own pews. My ex-in-laws, who once saw themselves as the righteous matriarch and patriarch of a proud family, are now nothing more than a cautionary tale whispered about during church luncheons. And me? I sleep soundly, knowing that I didn't have to raise my voice. I just let the truth do the shouting for me. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's precise, cold, truthful. Sometimes, all it takes is peeling away the mask to show people who someone really is and letting them decide what to do with that image. If this story hit that sweet spot between heartbreak and justice, give it a like. Subscribe for more tales of poetic revenge, and tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying way you've ever seen someone get exactly what they deserved? Until next time, keep your receipts.
My wife thought she was clever, sneaking off, lied to my face, using our kids as a cover. But when I found out she was sleeping with another man, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I planned. And what I did next didn't just end our marriage. It destroyed the man she betrayed me with. And honestly, he earned every second of it. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever fantasized about the perfect revenge, this story is for you. Hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories where justice comes full circle, and drop a comment when you hit the part where you know I went too far, or just far enough. It was the early 2000s. I was working full-time, doing what I thought was a dad and husband thing right, My kids were 4 and 6, still small enough to be innocent, but old enough to talk. And that's exactly how the cracks started to show. They began saying things like, "We went to Grandma and Grandpa's again today," which would have been fine if Grandma and Grandpa didn't live an hour and a half away. And this was happening 2, sometimes 3 times a week. That didn't make sense. My wife only worked part-time. I asked her about it. Casually, she brushed it off. "Oh, it was just once last week," she'd say. Or, "I didn't want to bug you with the schedule." But there was something in her tone, something flat. Her lies were clumsy, half-hearted. And I'd grown up in a household poisoned by lies. My parents cheated on each other constantly. I could feel that same sick tension creeping into my own home. So I started doing what any quietly suspicious husband would. I took notes. I started tracking the mileage on her car. Every Sunday night, I'd write down the odometer. By the next week, she was logging nearly 400 extra miles. That was impossible to ignore. I didn't explode. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed proof. Something undeniable. And then fate handed me the first piece of the puzzle. She left a sticky note on the computer desk. Just a scribbled AOL email password. I printed the emails and hid them, but that wasn't enough. I needed full clarity. No more guesswork. So I called a friend, a cop, and he put me in touch with someone even better, a retired detective named Ron, now working as a private investigator. Ron was old school, professional, discreet. I handed him everything I had, the emails, the mileage, the schedule. Within 2 weeks, Ron came back with a report that could have been pulled from a crime thriller. Photos, logs, hotel names, timestamps. She'd drop the kids, meet her lover, spend hours in a $40 a night dump, then swing by and play mom like nothing happened. I could have confronted her right then, but instead I got strategic. I called a divorce lawyer. I told him everything, but more importantly, I told him what I didn't want. No nuclear war in front of the kids. My goal wasn't chaos. It was clean, cold justice. But I wasn't done with Ron. I gave him one more job. "Find a guy," I said. And like a bloodhound, he did. His name was Bob. He was married with 3 kids. Worked as a VP of sales at his father-in-law's company. Nepotism at its finest. Lived in a nice house, which, funny enough, belonged to his wife's family. Ron even found out where his kids went to school, and that's when it all clicked. My wife wasn't just cheating with some nobody. She was sleeping with a man who had a family just like ours. And while I could walk away from her, someone else deserved to know the truth. So I timed it just right. On a Tuesday morning, my wife was served with divorce papers. At her job, she tried to call me. I didn't answer. That same day, Ron paid a visit to Bob's wife. He sat down with her, gently, carefully, and showed her everything. The emails, the photos, the motel receipts, the timestamps, proof that her husband had been cheating on her for months with my wife. I was in the room when she found out, but I imagine it was devastating. Still, what she did next, that was all her. Court records later showed she emptied their joint account that same afternoon, grabbed the kids, moved back in with her parents. Bob came home to an empty house and an eviction notice. Her parents owned the property. After all, when her father found out what Bob had done, he was fired immediately. No appeal, no second chance. You cheat on the boss's daughter, you're out. The collapse was fast and brutal. Over the next year, Bob spiraled. The divorce was nasty, public, explosive. He tried to fight it, but his wife had receipts. There was a police report that mentioned a physical altercation between Bob and her brother. Apparently, Bob showed up at her new place, tried to argue, and caught a broken nose for his trouble. Restraining orders followed, then arrests. I read online that he even spent some time in county jail after violating one of those orders. The last I heard, he left the state completely. No social media. No new job I could find. Just gone. And her? Bob's wife? She took a job at her father's company, the same one Bob used to work for. When her dad retired, she took over. Seems like she's doing great. As for me, Things were quiet. I finalized the divorce, moved into my own place. I didn't badmouth my ex to the kids. I kept it clean, civil, focused on co-parenting. When they became adults, I stopped speaking to her entirely. I don't hate her. I'm not obsessed with revenge. I just don't care anymore. She's important to our kids, and that's where my interest ends. But sometimes when I'm sitting on my porch with a beer, watching the sunset, I think about Bob, about the day he walked into a motel room thinking he was clever, only to have his whole life dismantled piece by piece. Not by shouting, not by violence, just the truth and timing. Bob lost his wife, his kids, his job, his home, and his reputation, all because he thought cheating with a married woman would come without consequences. My ex lost her marriage and any respect I had left for her. And me, I got my kids. I got peace. And I got closure. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. It's surgical. It's watching everything they built fall apart, without ever lifting a finger after the truth comes out. Justice doesn't always come through anger. Sometimes it comes through patience, precision, and letting people dig their own graves. All you have to do is hand them the shovel. If you found that story as satisfying as I did, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of cold, calculated revenge. And tell me in the comments, what's the most jaw-dropping act of justice you've ever seen? I read every story, and who knows, maybe yours is next.
His tenants were screaming. The power was out, the water was gone, and at 3 a.m., the only house in the entire neighborhood plunged into chaos was his. And all I did was turn a simple valve. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever watched someone abuse your kindness or steal what isn't theirs, then this story is your revenge fantasy come true. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and get ready, because this one's delicious. So I just bought a house in the heart of the capital city, an absolute steal. Literally. See, the previous owners were old family friends, desperate to sell and living overseas for 3 years. The house had been left in mid-renovation, empty and vulnerable. But for me, it was a dream. Prime location, dirt cheap price, a little run down, sure, but I had plans. What I didn't plan for was the war I'd end up fighting with the neighbor next door. The first sign something was off came on day one. I roll up to my new place, still dusty with time, and what do I see? A random motorbike, parked right inside my garage like it belonged there. No note, no explanation, just there. I did what any sane homeowner would do. I dragged it out onto the street. That same day, I had a gate installed. 15 minutes later, a furious man, mid-60s, balding, scowling, was hammering on my new gate. I didn't answer. I just watched from the window as he muttered and dragged his bike away. That man was my next-door neighbor. Already, I had a bad feeling. But at first, things settled. People still assumed the house was abandoned, blocking my gate, ignoring its existence. But a "no parking" sign cleared that up fast. Still, there was something off about the guy next door. The kind of entitled stare you can feel through a wall. My friends, the previous owners, had warned me about him. He didn't want us to sell. He made a fuss. He thinks he owns the street. I wasn't worried. I'm 6 feet tall, and I've got 3 dogs with more attitude than most men. He wasn't going to try anything, right? 1 week later, I'm in the shower, and suddenly, something strange happens. The water pressure drops. Now, water in my country is cheap and plentiful, but this wasn't normal. Even weirder. At the exact same moment, I heard something. A faint humming. The neighbor's water pump was running. See, in our city, multi-story homes can't rely on public water pressure. You need a pump to force it up to the rooftop tanks. And my neighbor, he had a full 3-story house. He lived on the ground floor, but he rented the top 2 to tenants. That's when it hit me. Every time his pump came on, my water pressure dropped. Coincidence? Maybe. But I decided to test it. I waited. His pump clicked off. I opened the taps. Pressure returned. Pump back on. My water trickled. I didn't want to believe it. But the more I thought, the more the puzzle clicked together. When my friends owned this place, the water bill had been oddly high, even though no one had lived here for years. They'd assumed it was just a leak in the pipes. Now I wasn't so sure. It was like watching the shadow of a crime years in the making finally take shape. The man had clearly found a way, somewhere on the property, to tap into my water line. He must have walked in during the years the house was empty, helped himself to a little free plumbing, and figured no one would notice. And he wasn't wrong until now. I searched, but couldn't find where the connection was made. That didn't matter. I knew enough. He was stealing my water, and I'd had enough. At first, I considered confronting him. But honestly, what would that do? He'd deny it. I'd become the bad guy in the neighborhood. I could report him. But again, I didn't have hard proof. And this was petty theft in the grand scheme. And yeah, sure, the water bill was only $5 a month, even with 3 dogs, a car wash, and a garden. But this wasn't about money. This was about respect. Because some people walk around with this quiet arrogance. They think the world owes them. That if they want something, it's theirs. That no one will stop them. This guy was that kind of person. And me, I'm not the kind of person you steal from twice. So I waited. I planned. And then on Monday, I struck. That evening, I heard it again, his pump humming like a parasite feeding on my house. So I walked outside, found the main valve that controlled my water supply, and turned it off. Click. Simple as that. Now, in my country, water pumps work through float valves and rooftop tanks. If the water level drops, the valve opens, sends a signal, the pump kicks on. Once it's full, it shuts off. But if there's no water flowing in, the pump just keeps running. Forever. And that's exactly what happened next. 3 a.m. I wake up to voices, then shouting. Outside, the neighbor's house is in chaos. The tenants are furious. There's no power. There's no water. Why is this happening again? And oh, did I mention? In my country, utilities like power and water are protected by law. Landlords must provide them. If they don't, tenants can go straight to the police. No courts, no delays, just fines. Turns out, my neighbor's ancient wiring couldn't handle a pump that never turned off. The motor overheated, the fuse box fried, the wiring melted, everything short-circuited. By the next morning, 2 tenants had already filed complaints. By the next evening, one had moved out completely, and 2 days later, he lost them both. The fines? $500. A fortune in our economy. On top of that, he now had to pay both tenants their security deposits back. He couldn't rent again until the wiring and water systems were completely redone. Thousands in repairs. I saw him the next day, standing outside his house like a man who just lost a war he didn't even know he'd started. And then, the final moment. He comes to my gate. Calm. Knocks once. I answer. Hey, he says. Did you turn off your water yesterday? I smile polite. Oh yeah, actually. One of my pipes was leaking. I had to shut it off for a bit until the plumber could come. He looks at me. Just looks. Stone-faced. Silent. He nods. Oh, okay. And turns away. But I saw it. I saw the flicker in his eyes. The anger. The helplessness. He knew. And he knew that I knew. He's moving out on Sunday to live with his daughter. His pride broken. His income gone. His little water theft scheme reduced to ashes by a flick of a wrist. Oh, and next week, I'm bringing in a plumber to remove every external pipe leading off my property. This little chapter is over. Sometimes, justice doesn't need a fight. Sometimes, all it takes is knowing where to turn off the tap. Because when someone steals from you, they're not just taking your things. They're telling you they don't think you'll fight back. So prove them wrong. If you've ever felt that burning urge for justice, if someone ever took something from you and thought they'd get away with it, drop a comment below. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen? And hey, if you like the story, like the video, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. There are more battles, more triumphs, and more taps waiting to be turned off. You won't want to miss them.
They raised the price by $80,000 after promising to sell. My friends were about to lose their home. So we threw the pettiest, dirtiest, most legal sabotage you've ever heard of, just in time for the open house. We didn't just stop the sale. We reverse gazumped the greedy landlords. And it was glorious. If you've ever been underestimated, lied to, or treated like you don't matter, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen. Now buckle up, because this one? It's personal. This happened about 15 years ago, but even today, it feels fresh in my memory. Back then, my best friend and her husband were raising 5 kids in one of the most expensive cities in the country. They were renting this beat-up, old 4-bedroom house for $400 a week. The kitchen was straight up disgusting, the plumbing smelled like death, and the walls looked like they hadn't seen fresh paint since the 70s. But it was home. The only reason they could afford it was because of the landlady, an older woman who was, quite frankly, incredibly kind. Despite being very wealthy, she didn't act like it. She froze their rent for 5 straight years, just so they could save up and, eventually, buy the house from her. No paperwork yet, but she promised it was theirs once the time came. My friends trusted her. So they scrimped and saved for half a decade. They didn't go on vacation. They didn't upgrade cars. Every cent went toward that goal, owning their home. And then, just 2 days after they told her they were finally ready to buy, she passed away. No contract. No witnesses. Just a verbal promise now locked away forever. That's when the new owners came into the picture. Her 4 kids. And trust me, these weren't struggling heirs. Each of them already had money. A lot of it. We're talking luxury vehicles, trust funds for their kids, and entire portfolios of inherited properties. At first, they seemed decent enough. They told my friends not to worry. Yes, they'd still sell the house, just as their mother promised. But of course, probate had to finish first. My friends, naive and still hopeful, believed them. They even started to fix the place up, prepping for what would soon be their home. Stripping wallpaper, painting walls, mapping out where new furniture would go. They were finally seeing the light at the end of a very long tunnel. But then came the hammer blow. Probate settled. Time to finalize the deal. Only, the price had changed. By $80,000. And oh, by the way, the house was now being listed on the open market. There was going to be an open house in just 7 days. My friends were devastated. They'd done everything right. They'd trusted the system. Trusted people. But now, not only were they priced out of the house, they were staring down the barrel of homelessness. Rent in the area had skyrocketed. They'd been on a fixed rate for 5 years, and now similar homes went for double, around $800 a week. And with 5 kids, finding something affordable with enough space felt impossible. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I wasn't. Because it was obvious to me, these wealthy siblings had never planned to honor their mom's promise. They were just waiting for the legal process to wrap up before they swooped in to flip the house for a quick payday. Their greed wasn't about need. It was about getting one last drop from an already overflowing cup. And that's when the anger hit me. Not regular anger. Not frustration. I'm talking blood-boiling, chest-thumping, I need to do something right now rage. And I did do something. I started plotting. If they were going to play dirty, we'd make sure the house didn't sell. At least, not to anyone but my friends. I spent hours researching what made houses desirable to buyers. Turns out, it's all about perception. Light, space, smell, atmosphere, neighborhood vibes. We could work with that. Step 1. Shrink the space. We pulled every piece of furniture away from the walls. Added extra furniture just to clutter the space. Motorcycle posters. Random ornaments. Nothing matched. It felt cramped and chaotic. Step 2. Weaponize the senses. While I was staging visual clutter, my friend was on kitchen duty, boiling a full head of cabbage. The smell? Disgusting. But we didn't stop there. We sprayed ammonia around every entry point to mimic the smell of cat urine. Then, get this, we poured 2 dozen rotten eggs straight into the drains. Instant sewer gas. No candle or potpourri in the world could save that mess. Step 3. Neighborhood makeover. With permission, we dumped a moldy, ripped couch in the neighbor's yard across the street. Classic red flag furniture. You know the type. And then it was time to bring in the crew. We called every friend we had with a noisy, sputtering car. Do some laps, we said. Make the street feel chaotic. Like something was always going on. And then we got creative. Our local rugby club is full of absolute units. Big, bearded, tattooed legends who also happen to ride motorcycles. We set up a free barbecue in the front yard next door. Gave out cheap beer. Told them to show up in their roughest gear. It looked like the after party from a biker gang reunion. When the open house day finally came, it was perfect. The air reeked of boiled cabbage and sewage. Cars revved up and down the street. People laughed and yelled over the hum of grills. Our biker rugby brothers leaned against their bikes, eyeing every newcomer like security guards at a dive bar. Potential buyers started trickling in. One couple opened the door, took one whiff, and bolted. Another lady didn't even get out of her car. She sat there, eyes locked on the party happening just next door. A minute later, she pulled away. Only one guy stayed more than 10 minutes. He chatted with someone leaving the barbecue, asking if that kind of gathering happened often. The guy, bless him, said, "Oh yeah, pretty much every couple of weeks. Sometimes even more. And don't even get me started on the drains. Roots clog 'em up all the time. Smells like a backed-up toilet in summer." Needless to say, he didn't make an offer either. And here's the kicker. With no serious interest, my friends swooped in and made an offer. Yes, it was higher than they'd hoped, but it was still below the outrageous amount the new owners were hoping for. They signed the papers and put down the deposit that very day. And then, after the paperwork was finalized, that one brave buyer tried to come back, with an offer $30,000 higher. Too late. Strict anti-gazumping laws meant the owners had to honor the first signed agreement. My friends got their house. The greedy siblings got exactly what they deserved, less than they wanted, and a long lesson in humility. I can only imagine their faces when they realized they'd been outmaneuvered by the very people they tried to screw over. Sometimes justice isn't about big courtroom battles or revenge that burns bridges. Sometimes it's a perfectly legal stink bomb, a barbecue, and a borrowed couch across the street. Sometimes justice is giving the little guy, who's been lied to and pushed aside, the win they've earned 100 times over. If that victory felt as sweet to you as it did to us, give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear that clever beats cruel every single time. And tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen? Subscribe for more true stories where justice gets the last word. We've got plenty more where this came from.
They fired me halfway through the year for not hitting an impossible goal. So I made one call. And 4 months later, my ex-boss was unemployed, my director was humiliated by the university chancellor, and I was on a beach in Bali with more cash than I'd ever earned in a year. Oh, and the same university that underpaid and disrespected me? They blew their budget by 10 times, trying to fix their mistake. If you've ever been underestimated, overworked, or stabbed in the back by a smug boss, this one's for you. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop a comment below if you've ever dreamed of serving justice with a side of cold, calculated payback. Let's get into it. This happened in the early 2010s, back when YouTube was still a bit of a Wild West for universities. I'd just been hired as a content creator for a university looking to go digital. The pay was low, $2,200 a month, but I figured it was a foot in the door. Second day on the job, my manager drops my KPI on my desk like it's nothing. 85 videos. 3 to 10 minutes each. All in 52 weeks. Let that sink in. 85 polished, professional-grade videos, written, shot, edited, and published by me, solo. No team. No resources. Their equipment. Ancient. Their software. Prehistoric. So guess who had to use his own camera, software, and laptop for everything. Oh, and they wouldn't even pay for royalty-free music. So I was now a one-man band. Scripting, producing, shooting, composing, editing, uploading. All while earning peanuts. I raised the red flag early, told my manager this was unsustainable. She gave me a warm, reassuring smile and said, "Don't worry, we're looking for quality, not just quantity." That line would come back to haunt her. At first, things were decent. She was friendly, supportive, even. But then, one day, she found out I smoked. Suddenly, her tone changed. The compliments dried up, replaced with passive-aggressive digs and subtle jabs. A colleague later face-bombed when I told her what had happened. Turns out, my manager hated smokers, like, obsessively. She'd even gotten others fired for it. I was now in her crosshairs. Every day became a game of survival. She'd complain about me smelling like smoke, even if I hadn't smoked that day. She nitpicked my arrival time, even though I stayed late 4 hours daily. She complained I wasn't reachable during my legally mandated breaks. She didn't care about my work ethic. She wanted me gone. Still, I stayed, because I believed in the work. And maybe, I thought she'd come around. I was wrong. 5 months in, I got called into the director's office. My stomach dropped when I saw my manager already sitting there, with that look. The one where someone pretends to be disappointed, while barely hiding how pleased they are. The director didn't waste time. She said she was concerned I was falling behind. I had completed 30 out of 85 videos. Apparently, that wasn't enough. I explained, calmly, but with desperation simmering under my skin, that I was a one-man team working 60-plus hours a week. That the videos I had finished were performing better than anything their channel had ever published. That my manager had promised quality over quantity. The director shook her head. The KPI is 80. They'd go through my list. So before I packed my things, I opened that database. And I corrupted every contact in it. Wrong phone numbers. Messed up emails. All of it, except for one. A boutique production house. One that just so happened to have a junior director I was friends with. I rang him up and laid it out. "This is your chance," I said. "They need help. I'll give you the perfect pitch, walk you through exactly what they want to hear. You win the contract, your production house pays me 15% finder's fee." He was in. His GM also in, especially when they realized this project was worth 6 figures. 2 days later, they got the call to pitch. And thanks to the step-by-step playbook I provided, they nailed it. The director and my ex-manager were stunned. How do they know our style so well? How did they understand exactly what we wanted? Of course they did. Because I told them. The deal was signed instantly. Production began. Now, using a professional team wasn't cheap. Each video cost more than 2 months of my old salary. But they had a full crew. Producers, sound engineers, editors, the works. They could crank out a video every 2 to 3 days. In just 4 months, they finished 50 videos. That's right, my old workload, done at lightning speed. At a price tag the university was definitely not prepared for. Meanwhile, I was collecting a fat 15% cut. Enough for a long holiday in Bali, and enough left over to enroll in film school overseas. Justice tasted like ocean breeze and cocktails. I thought that was the end. That I'd taken my win and walked away. But karma had more in store. One day, I get a call. It's my old colleague, the one who warned me about the manager. "Dude, you won't believe this. My ex-manager fired. The director publicly reprimanded by the university chancellor. See, the university's content creation project had a budget of, wait for it, about 1.5 times my yearly salary. They ended up spending over 10 times that. Why? Because my manager, desperate to cover up her mess, greenlit the entire spend without the director's consent. She'd burned through the university's funds just to prove she could finish what I started. Instead, she buried her career. And the director's reputation went down with her. Sometimes, revenge isn't about anger. It's about clarity. It's realizing that when someone throws you away like you're nothing, the best thing you can do is show them exactly what they lost. Not by fighting fire with fire, but by lighting a torch and walking away. If that story lit something inside you, hit that like button. Drop a comment below. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen or pulled off? And if you're hungry for more stories where justice doesn't knock, it kicks the door down, subscribe and join the community. We're just getting started.